I used to think that Acclaim was the benchmark for bad publishers around the turn of the millennium. They made a lot of bad and forgettable games in the last 5 years of their existence. They made a poor NBA Jam reboot, BMX, XXX, the Legends of Wrestling games. The list goes on. This is a company that bought out LJN, for crying out loud. But recently I've noticed another company who wants to take that mantle. Titus. Titus had a big year in 1999. They published 4 games. Xena Warrior Princess game, remember that show? And a fighting game called Evil Zone, which both got middling reviews at best, somewhere in the 60s or low 70s, roughly. Those were the highlights of the year for them. Titus's biggest game of the year was a little title called Superman for the Nintendo 64. Everyone knows how that turned out. I'm not going to mention it. I'm not going to go into detail about it. The 4th game was an original racing game called Roadsters for the PS1, N64, PC, and Dreamcast. I'll just go out and say the Dreamcast version gives Superman 64 a run for its money as far as terrible games by Titus go, or terrible games in general go. The music is just bland. Really short clips that just repeat over and over. It sound like it's stock footage. The driver whips are stale, repetitive. The sound effects are boring. There's really nothing good in terms of audio. The graphics make the PlayStation 1 blush, which I guess can be expected if this is a port of the PS1 game, but I'm not going to put myself through that version just to find that out. Even though the game is ugly, there's still a significant amount of popping and slowdown. The frame rate doesn't hold 60 frames per second. It might not even hold 30 sometimes. The popping is not bad enough that you'll hit something, but it's still noticeable, even though, the game's ugly as balls. Now let's get to the gameplay, where the bulk of this game's problems lie. The game's controls are finicky, to say the least. It's a digital control scheme in an analog world. The throttle and brakes are pretty much on and off. There's no in-between, even though the Dreamcast triggers excel at in-between. They're very good triggers. And the steering varies between oversteer and understeer, with little in-between. You can actually use the D-pad to steer on it, and this is like... The system doesn't have enough buttons for a handbrake, so instead of mapping that or the views to the D-pad, they just made the D-pad steering. And you don't have a handbrake button. You can't use a handbrake. It's ridiculous. Collision detection is poor, to say the least. Some objects don't do anything when you hit them. Some just fly around like a tree. I don't know how good a video of that, but if you saw my last video about how Roadsters is a complete buggy mess, you'll see that tree that I cut down twice. That's the collision detection. Some objects force you to bounce off them like a giant game of pinball, which would be more enjoyable. Other objects, especially cars, seem to have some sort of buffer zone around them, so you can't actually hit them sometimes. You just hit the air around them. But then other times, you clip through the back of the car. It's ridiculous. It just shows lazy programming. Oh, and another really fun thing. In order to reverse, instead of holding down the brake button as you would in most every racing game, or even pressing a specific button, like some PC racing games make you do, you have to shift down. Even if you're in automatic transmission, you shift down and then shift back up in order to go forward again. That'll be necessary in a bit. The game has shortcuts, kind of. When driving a course in a Class C car, the lowest class in the game, all the shortcuts are walled off, using like a facsimile of the crowd control barricades. In most other games, the crowd control barricades are basically a signal for you to just plow through it and you're in a shortcut. Nope! Invisible walls. You'll lose time and spots backing up to get back on the track, especially with the backing up that we were talking about, yeah. Couple of that one, yeah. And you're basically guaranteed to lose time. And when you use the A-class cars, yes, that means there's only 3 classes of car in the game, all the shortcuts are opened up, but there's no removal of the barricades that are there, so there's no visual clue that you can go that way. It's literally the dumbest thing I've ever seen in a racing game. This is a terrible video game. One of the worst video games I've ever played. It's ugly, it's bland, it doesn't feel like you're driving. This is legitimately the worst Dreamcast game I've ever played, and possibly the worst game in existence. However, there are some good things about this game. First, the game just doesn't melt your Dreamcast and ruin it when all the good games the system has. That's a plus. Second, the case that comes in can be used with much better games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Sonic Adventure, freaking Railroad Tycoon 2, or hell, a Game Shark Dreamcast disc would be better than this. And the disc itself works as a coaster for the drinks of your choice. Those are useful things. Okay, all those are just crap. It's not even that good of a coaster with a hole in the middle. Everything about this game is terrible. If you see this game in stores, I suggest you pick it up and you throw it at whoever is trying to sell you a copy of Roadsters, because that person deserves to have a jewel case thrown at them. Roadsters gets a 1 out of 10, only because the scale doesn't go down to 0. Next week I'll review something better. I can't review anything worse. I can't do it.